Hi, everybody. Welcome to Crypto Ramble. My name is Desiree. I am speaking with one of my favorite people in the crypto space, Reuben Yap. We met at, I'm not sure which conference, a couple conferences we've met up at, mostly in New York City. Reuben is a project steward of Zcoin, privacy coin. And as you guys know, I'm really into privacy coins in the crypto space. I actually did a video where I was having some fun with Reuben's profile picture on my channel and talking about Zcoin having released their Sigma protocol, which meant that they didn't have a trusted setup anymore. I did that last year in around the summertime. And so Reuben is very knowledgeable about the whole space in general and privacy coins in particular. We're going to cover a few different topics. First of all, talking about privacy coins and the whole crypto space, regulations, delisting from exchanges. We're also going to talk about some current events and then maybe also the whole maximalism philosophy and how that sort of excludes coins that I really care about, such as privacy coins. So, hi, Reuben. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, hi everyone. So good to be on again.
This time in person. So first of all, I don't know if whoever is listening or watching heard my interview with Joel Valenzuela from Dash, but we were talking about the delisting of coins from exchanges recently, the most notable one being Monero. I believe it was from BitBay, but this has happened in the past. I only think Zcash is one of the coins that sort of gets through this because they're on some major exchanges, like I think Coinbase. And Joel was saying that it doesn't make sense because even though certain coins don't market themselves as privacy coins, such as say Bitcoin, in essence they may be using the same technology. The users who use those coins might be able to use the same technology, such as CoinJoin, that these privacy coins use. And so it's more about regulators or people who decide what gets to stay or has to leave an exchange, what they perceive a coin to be, rather than what the actual abilities of the coin, capabilities of the coin is. And I know that Reuben kind of has a similar viewpoint, I think, and maybe he could expand on that.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I mean, because I'm not a big believer of CoinJoin in general. I mean, it's simple, it has its benefits, but I mean, even you talk to like the guys at Samurai Wallet, which uses Whirlpool and all of their CoinJoin stuff. You take a look at the number of steps and hoops you have to jump through to perform an effective coin join is just way too much for an average user to use. But that's slightly besides the point. I think the point is that you are correct that most regulators are more focused on the form rather than the substance. So like if we market ourselves as a privacy coin, then we are more likely to get lumped into this high risk category, right?
Right.
And there are many other coins that do have some form of privacy. I mean, Dash of course has its own private SEN with its CoinJoin mixers. I mean, Komodo has ZK Snarks technology, but they haven't been affected, and I have actually had personal experience on this. I actually I can't say who, but we were about to be listed with a major, crypto credit card provider. And what happened was one day before the listing, and we had signed the agreement and everything was ready to go out. We were told that some of their partners were not comfortable having a privacy coin on their platform. And I was like, well, you guys already have some coins there with clear privacy features. I mean, Dash was one of them, right? So I said, how does that gel in, And they were saying that, yeah, it's actually more just about the marketing. Can Zcoin market itself as something else? And I'm like, what would Zcoin be without privacy, right? And I really don't know. I couldn't think of a way, and I didn't want to go down that path because it seemed to be admitting that privacy was a bad thing. So I guess my point is that, I don't think regulators fully understand the scope of what privacy coins are, and perhaps how futile it is to target privacy coins when now many other coins now are considering privacy solutions. Like Ethereum's looking at privacy solutions, Bitcoin has also like been developing their privacy solutions. So what are we saying? Are we saying that, like shit privacy is okay, but good privacy isn't? I find that really a very weird distinction to make. And I think at the end of the day is that these regulators don't fully understand the technology, but they want to be seen as doing something, and privacy coins are like an easy niche to attack, especially one like Monero, which has in the past celebrated being on darknets. And that's why I feel that privacy coins have to be very careful about what they want to be seen as, right? We want to promote privacy coins as something that it's a basic human right, like it's the same types of rights that prevent a bank from revealing our information to other people, and that should be the kind of focus of privacy coins, rather than trying to say the only way that we can do this is through darknet market adoption and things like that, which really plays into the narrative that privacy is a bad thing. And one of the things that also really irks me is that this is not a new battle, because yes, financial privacy with cryptocurrencies may be kind of new, but just like maybe 10-15 years ago in the US, you weren't allowed to export products with good encryption because they were considered a weapon, and you had to have like export grade tools which basically downgraded the encryption to be like less good. Can you imagine that? I mean, this is the same argument. They were saying that encryption prevents crime, and our adversaries can use it, so we can only export crap versions of security where we can compromise it, right? And and of course the general community fought back, and now encryption is widely available. And similarly, even like I started a VPN company in 2007. When I first started, VPNs were the same thing. They were like, why do you want to hide your internet IP address? You must be doing something bad. And many payment providers would not allow me to accept payments because they said I was high risk and in the same category as adult videos and stuff. And I don't have anything against adult videos, but I was placed into that whole like high risk category. And I was like, why? I'm just encrypting internet traffic. What's the big deal? And now today, VPNs are seen as an essential tool, right? Like,
right.
You have an antivirus, you have a VPN, you want to protect your internet privacy. And I feel that we are just now approaching the whole debate with financial privacy. And I actually recently read a really cool article where we are only experiencing this problem because we're moving to digital cash, because physical cash is private and anonymous by default. But you see that increasing trend of countries going cashless, and that's when they start cracking down on cash, and that's why this whole financial privacy with digital currencies is at the forefront. But yeah, I mean, there was a bit of a ramble, but this is crypto ramble. So.
No, that was a great ramble. I just wanted to ask you, can you give me an example of a kind of product where they had to downgrade the encryption features? Like, what kind of software product are you talking about?
It was quite a while back, but like for example, like I don't have the exact name of it, but I can definitely tell it to you later. You just need a quick Google. But I remember that like if you were using like, let's say like 256-bit security, you could only export like a lower grade of that, or you didn't have certain access to certain algorithms or like proofs. So I felt that was really weird. I mean, even back then, like in 1990s, the government actually considered like putting in a clipper chip, which actually was effectively a backdoor into stuff. You just need a Google clipper chip.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can see that it's always been a constant battle. And we really, really have to just be cognizant that we don't buy into this narrative that encryption is bad for people. I mean, I think Trump recently tweeted something about
Yeah, he did.
Apple.
Yeah, that they need to give backdoors, which I'm sure you are also totally against. Yeah, he did tweet that. I know that in the past, governments may have been trying to do that, but it really doesn't make any sense even for the government, because the same technology that they want to have access to, they might need other people to be using in order to create the noise, which is exactly how privacy coins work today, where you need traffic from a lot of different sources to obscure. Like, that's how you create the privacy. And I never realized this before reading Snowden's permanent record book, that the government only sort of allows Tor to exist because they, for their own use, it's useful for other people to be giving it traffic so that they can obscure their own communications. And I don't know if it's going to be the exact same thing for privacy coins, but it's like a double-edged sword for governmental agencies. If you take privacy away from the people who you consider bad, you're also taking it away from yourself at the end of the day. So.
I do think it's also like, I mean, when at that time, I guess the US was like, a clear leader in this kind of technologies, but now you have like many other countries with very, very talented, hacking teams and stuff like that, like, China, Russia, or even like Israel, and to think that, oh yeah, I'm going to downgrade this technology and only we can exploit it, without realizing that possibly these other countries with very, very good resources as well can possibly, find the backdoor into this, right? And it's a really real threat. So I really am against any sort of like backdoors into the system. It just doesn't really make sense. I mean, like, take a look. Something as secret as like the plans to the like F-22 fighter, parts of it were leaked to the Chinese military, which then use it to build their own 5th generation fighter. So like, look, if you can't keep something like that secure, what more like potential backdoors and stuff like that?
Yeah, I agree. It's more about equalizing the playing field versus trying to keep it down, like allowing it to rise, and then each side able to come up with their own either attacks or defenses, right, than trying to say, no, we're just going to stop anyone from having access to this technology at all. So
I mean, I mean, like, at the end of the day, it's about boiling down about balancing liberty with law enforcement, right? And many sort of stuff, actually, all this invasions in our privacy always start with stuff that people find it hard to fight against, like hard to justify. Like, for example, like Apple, scanning our photos, and they will say, we're doing this to combat child pornography. Now, will you go out and say like, no, you're going to defend child pornography? I mean, that's not what you're doing, but it looks bad if you say that, no, I'm against this technology, and Apple's like, oh, you're against fighting child pornography?
Yeah.
That's how it starts. And then it starts creeping and expanding its usage, because then people accept. And that's always been the case. You start with like the most heinous crimes, and then say that, yeah, privacy or encryption technologies of prevent us from doing this, investigating this stuff, so we should open it. And most people will be like, they don't think so much, and they're like, yeah, of course I'm against child pornography. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Without realizing is that, look, how many of the population are child pornographers? I think, hopefully, I would say that it's a small percentage. But this type of technologies affect larger swath of people, and the risk there has to be weighed out, right? And this is something that I actually experienced in Malaysia, where the government ISP started blocking. Well, first of all, they started blocking pornographic sites. And I was like, okay, fine, I can understand that. And then after that, it was like, okay, we're banning P2P now. I'm like, okay. Then after that, they started censoring political views that were against the government, saying there was fake news and dissemination of wrong information.
Right.
And as a result, stuff like medium.com were completely blocked out to us. And I mean, that's why we have VPN technology and stuff like that. But you can see that creep. And that has happened with almost all attacks on privacy. It's a slow creep. And we really have to be cognizant about this and really fight for it. Even if it means saying that, yeah, I know that it makes your life chasing child pornographers a bit harder. But look, the implications are a lot wider than just this. So,
right. That's the perfect way to put it, and that's what I think about most privacy technology, that yes, it will make law enforcement's job a lot harder, but it doesn't mean that anyone's asking law enforcement to stop doing their jobs. And what they're asking for to make their jobs easier is just too much of a gamble for the rest of the population. So I totally agree with that. So knowing all of these things, would you say, and this is what I think, that the crypto blockchain space in terms of regulation is going in the direction of allowing privacy to flourish as we adopt these new technologies? I think that it's not, and I don't know if it will. I don't know where that needle, as the line is being drawn, is going to sway. Is it going to go more in the 1984 direction, or is it going to go more into the direction where law enforcement works around privacy? Just technology that has privacy enabled because it's a human right.
I mean, I'm not actually there are some people that saying that oh yeah, full privacy at all costs. But I do believe that they can still be balanced, right? And you want to just make it tough, to make it too easy to do stuff like money laundering, terrorist funding. And I mean, I'm not a very big fan of the FATF travel rule, but I kind of understand its purpose. And
what's the FATF travel rule?
So it's the Financial Action Task Force. The travel rule basically means that whenever a financial institution or exchange transfers money to another financial institution or exchange, it would have to attach sender and receiver information. That means the bank that's receiving this money or cryptocurrency or exchange needs to know, okay, where did these funds originally come from when they first entered? And that's just people have kind of misunderstood, meaning they thought that every single person has to do this as a report. It is only covers a transfer from what they actually, the official term is VAS, which is like virtual something service provider. But basically what I'm saying is that something that acts like a financial institution or an exchange, whenever they're transferring money only to another financial institution exchange, they have to review okay, whose money is this? And I think that's okay. I'm not a fan of it, but I can understand it and I can accept it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people have applied that rule to mean that it bans privacy coins, which is silly because they say, oh, well, everything's completely anonymous, so how do I transfer this money to another exchange without telling who it is, right? And I'm like, look, the travel rule was designed to work even with cash. And cash is anonymous, so what's the big deal, right? And the rules actually say that you don't even have to attach that information about sender and receiver information in the transaction itself. You can just communicate okay, I batch out this transaction that I'm sending to this other VASP, and then after that I'll just give them a list. Okay, yeah, this transaction corresponded to this of my customers and stuff like that. So even if I'm transacting with Zcoin or Monero or Zcash, right, and they're using the private functions, It doesn't matter because if you have already KYC on their exchange, then when you're transferring it over, they already know who you are. So what kind of privacy? I mean, you don't really. What's the difference that you still know who the sender is, because you can still easily comply with all these FATF travel rules as well. So I guess that's my point of view on that, in the sense that yes, regulation actually in the US has been, how do you say, it's actually been quite measured, and they also make like distinctions to say that, oh yeah, you know, if you build privacy technologies, there's nothing wrong with it, right? But it's actually like countries like the UK, the Korea, which take these rules and then interpret it differently, and then fight and say that, oh no, this is a reason to ban all privacy coins. Oh, by the way, the UK interprets the travel rule also to mean that people who develop this technology or software also have to report. And I'm like, what does that mean, right? So there is a battle. I do think that it's good that more people are aware of the importance of privacy, but remember, it's all about a PR game, right? With anything right today, with like social media or fake news or whatnot, it's always about the spin, and we have to be very cognizant when people talk about terrorist funding and all this sort of stuff, and they're like, okay, you know, well, how much percentage is actually doing this and to mitigate this, and is this actually a problem, you know? And like, if you take a look, actual cryptocurrency usage in crime is actually pretty low. I mean, yes, it happens, but it's really low. You know, most of it is legitimate use, so I don't really see what the issue is. Yeah.
So do you think that this balance that you think could be struck just has to do with education and making people understand what we're saying here, not just people, but people and regulators also?
Yes, I mean, I think people just have to realize that what they're giving up to fight against privacy. And unfortunately, in countries like China, that may already be too late. You know, like everything's moving into like you try to use physical cash, it's really hard already. And now they're moving into like issuing, like, you know, people give you a funny look. Like if you go to China and you pay people with cash, they're like, can't you give me WeChat Pay or something? Well, why are you giving me this shit? You know, like they actually look at you funny. You must be a tourist. And, you know, it's like, and it's funny, especially in the urban countries, and it just shows that they basically have no financial privacy anymore. Now, one of the important things that I want to bring up is that people always think about financial privacy as like, yeah, basic human right and all that stuff. But then they're like, oh yeah, you know, it can facilitate money laundering and terrorist funding. But one of the things that was really important is to think about, what does it mean when the government has full insight into and control over all your finances? So, you know, in the US, you have the right to bear arms, and one of the justifications of that is so that you can rise up against a government that's being an asshole, right?
Yes.
But look, if a government can lock down your money and cut you off from the financial system, what kind of effective resistance can you have? Right. If I was the opposition, if let's say like a party became like really, really popular, like had like 60-70% of the population voting for it, and they said, and then next thing it becomes like any sort of opposition that dares to rise up against them, I cut you off from the money just on some sort of charges, like, oh yeah, you did this, oh you had some tax evasion or something like that, and no one will dare to fight against the government, right? And this is actually something that happens in my country, not in the sense of cutting people off, but because unfortunately, I don't think there are many politicians that are completely clean. They generally have some sort of basically they have done some stuff, right? And because politicians here aren't paid well, the government service isn't paid well, the police isn't paid well, so there's all that incentive to have these additional sources of income, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens then is that these people cannot fight against the government, because the moment they try to do something, the government says, okay, I'm going to call the anti-corruption agency to investigate into you. So everyone just falls into line. And this is kind of similar, right? If everyone can control your finances, you are effectively making a government that cannot be replaced. And I think that's a really important point that people need to be aware about.
Yeah, I also think that particular point the way it's privacy is framed as sort of almost a secondary supplementary hand for like the Second Amendment. I think that would really resonate with a lot of US based listeners. All right. So apart from all this issue with privacy coins, I kind of wanted to talk to you about other current events that are going on. I know I don't really talk about trading or price basically at all on my channel, but are you yourself, Reuben, enthusiastic about the pumps sort of going on with a lot of coins and altcoins in particular? Zcoin is doing very well. Particle is not doing so well, but most coins in general are doing pretty well. And I don't predict or anything. Like I would say something like within 10 years the overall crypto space will go very well, but I don't really follow that stuff. How do you feel about it all?
What do I think about all these pumps? I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, it shows that coins besides Bitcoin still has interest, which is great. That means people are still looking at our projects and this and stuff like that. But I'm realistic, and I'm like, do they actually care about the tech, or is this just another pump opportunity?
Yeah.
So that's something, because we have to be realistic as to what our crypto industry has become. And you can talk about all the benefits and uncensorable money and blah blah blah, but right now it's a huge casino, and like where's all the Bitcoin trading coming from? And you speak to a lot of this, like even OGs who do trading, they're like, yeah, I trade on BitMax, I do like derivatives and futures, and many of these things don't even have Bitcoin backing them, right? So when you're talking about all these derivatives, it means that I'm betting on the price of Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin price is derived from a couple of indexes that then pull the price of actual Bitcoin sitting in a variety of exchanges. So what that means is that I'm making a bet on not really Bitcoin, it's like a contract over the price of Bitcoin, rather than they don't even need the whole Bitcoin themselves.
Right.
Can you imagine that, right? Yeah, so it's like a totally, and these are things that exist in the traditional markets, and now when you see derivative volume looks to be outpacing regular spot volume, means that more people are doing all this stuff rather than trading actual Bitcoin. That's not good. That means we are becoming exactly like the financial institutions that we were trying to displace, right?
Right.
So we take a look at what happened to BSV, right? Like, I know there's a lot of BSV supporters, but it's just clear as day to me that Craig is not Satoshi. There's just a mountain of evidence on that, and just seems to be a very coordinated pump, which is also really interesting because a lot of exchanges delisted BSV because of this Craig Wright thing. But what that meant was that it was also easier to pump, because if you're on secondary exchanges, some of them with less than scrupulous morals, it's so much easier to pump it, because you can easily fake volume, you can do your own self trading, and there's no real traders to fight against. So I'm optimistic, and I'm hopeful that this speculation, this run up, brings interest into the space. That's always good. But hopefully that once people get into the space, then they realize, oh wow, this is something that is potentially world changing, and we go down that path rather than just sticking to making doing BitMax and shilling your referral links and things like that. So yeah, I mean, that's my point of view, and I do hope that like privacy coins have a particular. I mean, you take a look at the recent pumps. Privacy coins have generally done well. Zcash has done well. We have done well. I think Grin and Beam hasn't seen a huge pump yet, but in general, that's been like an interesting trend. I am no expert trader. I do believe that we are at the beginning of a new market cycle of going up, but I'm still cautious. Like this thing can just like disappear any day, right?
Yeah, I don't even really like I used to check the price a lot more, but I don't really do it anymore. I'm just not gonna pay any attention. I think like you were saying, a lot of people enter the space and they don't look beyond the potential gains that they can make financially to the technology behind coins, and that's worrisome. I think it's fine if people want to trade assets as they do with like stock markets, traditional finance, as long as the assets beneath them are actually doing something useful and providing value to people. As long as that's going on, then it would make sense for people to want to trade those assets, and it would probably even be considered a good thing, because in some ways people buying into a coin to make gains also helps the projects develop and do something with the technology itself. So that's not a bad. Sorry.
I mean, I find it sad that like BSV is in like number 3, you know, or Litecoin. I mean, like there's nothing scammy about Litecoin, but it's like it hasn't actually really contributed to development at all. Litecoin is just a copy. I think its last release, I don't know, was like more than a year ago or something like that, and it's just been stagnant, right? They're not giving back to the space. You have Bitcoin Cash, you have BSV. I have nothing against Bitcoin Cash. They are innovating as well, but like all the really cool stuff isn't in you know, you have Ripple, right? Which, yeah, I mean, I have my own views on that, but it's quite sad that this is the top contenders, right?
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, you didn't see my crypto year review video, but I was like, I also gave my sort of a personal review, and I said, partially released this marketplace, but nobody cared, and that's depressing. And then I moved on, and I'm sure that a lot of crypto projects out there, I don't even really know of them, feel the same way, because you can't even cut through the noise of the people who are already there, like the coins, say like Litecoin, who have already established themselves in the space and they have all the funds to do all the marketing. You can't cut through that in order to even learn about which new coins to get educated on, so that you can maybe even have an opinion. And also because there's so many, like how do you even know like what's a scam and what's not? Like it's really hard to do that.
Even I can't keep track of, you know, take a look at the top 100 or like even top 50. You're like, I've never heard of this project. I don't even know what they do. Or, and you actually realize that the ones that are generally the most dishonest tend to be the most religious followings, because like I'm just gonna call them out, like Virgil, you know, like they have like no privacy technology, you know, like raise money to like millions of dollars to pay to Pornhub to get listed and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of these people, like they bought in, they maybe made some money or they're underwater, but then they became like emotionally attached to it and becomes really scary. It's like a cult. They can't see how bad the technology is, or you know, and does that mean that maybe technology doesn't matter? You know, like I was just surprised that I actually just recently got off like a little Twitter spat with Digibyte, which I was very taken aback. Like I used to have a good view of Digibyte, but after speaking to Jared and just seeing like the tactics that he used, so he claimed that so he tweeted something publicly, and this is not the first time I've heard it. It's probably a third, fourth time. If you take a look at Wikipedia as well, or some wiki, They say that Bitcoin Cash uses Digibyte's code for their difficulty adjustment. So difficulty adjustment is about basically how the mining difficulty is being adjusted, right? And I think Jared said like, all these crap coins, and if not for Digibyte, Bitcoin Cash would have been screwed over. So they're taking our stuff. And I was like, no, that can't be right, because I actually know the history of how Bitcoin Cash difficulty adjustment actually came about. And so I actually tweeted back and I said, hey, maybe you're mistaken, because I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin Cash did not use any of Digibyte's code for this part, because they use something called a simple moving average, and you have something called DigiShield or multi-shield that is a lot more complicated. So where is, and simple moving average is just simple moving average, right? Like what is it, right? And I called him on Saturday. I said, maybe you're mistaken. And it wasn't actually like confrontation. He was like, maybe it's a mistake, right?
Right.
And then he's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, the Bitcoin Cash people approached me and then said that they complained that our documentation was not good enough and stuff like that, and now they used it. And I was like, well, okay, let's just take a look at the code. Did they use it or not? And I pointed to the code, like I pointed to the exact code sections and the whole history of that, and it was definitely a simple moving average versus something like DigiShield, which is a totally different approach to things, which isn't a moving average type of algorithm as well. And instead of saying, oh yeah, sorry, I'm mistaken, he just doubled down and basically linked to this trade where a third party guy that has no affiliation to Bitcoin Cash was actually saying that, oh yeah, DigiShield has weaknesses and this wouldn't work well for Bitcoin Cash. And I don't know how he extrapolated that and said that now Bitcoin Cash is using it. I was like, that's a really, really far jump. And the worst thing was all these Digibyte fans started crapping on me, saying like, oh, you must be new to the space. Like, dude. And I'm like, take a look at the evidence. I'm like, no, you look at the evidence. I provided the evidence for you right here. And they say, oh yeah, but I'm not a coder, I can't evaluate, but I trust what Jared says. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. They like ask someone that can read code, or just take a simple look at the trade that Jared linked, which doesn't show that Bitcoin Cash is looking at it. They're just like, Bitcoin Cash was just looking at a bunch of algorithms, and of course look at DigiShield. I'm like, interesting, and maybe it wouldn't work for us, and that's it. So he still hasn't taken down that tweet. He still hasn't apologized for it. Instead of doing that, he attacked the difficulty adjustment guy, saying that DigiShield has been, this difficulty algorithm has been working for 6 years, so there's no problem with it. I'm like, God. So, I mean, this is a bit, again, of a ramble, but I wanted to illustrate that this was a very clear case of the evidence is being pointed at you, and you still cannot accept the truth because of your tribalism or whatnot. And I think that's the same with like Craig Wright, like he's been caught saying that, oh yeah, I read this white paper and I remember this section and la la la. Then you find out, because I wrote it, because he forgot that he was the one who supposedly wrote the white paper, right? And there's just so much evidence against Craig Wright of not being even like a competent coder to do these things, and it's not him. I mean, who knows? Maybe he offed Satoshi and has access to the wallet or whatnot.
Oh my God!
He's definitely not Satoshi. Who knows, right? Like,
who knows, indeed. Well, I think it really highlights almost why this space is so scammy, because there's like a technology and only your video cut out. There's new technology and only some people really understand how it works. And even though a lot of people could understand, it takes time to educate oneself. Like, not everyone's going to do that. It's not really realistic. And so you're kind of left having to depend on other people who are in the know for their opinions. And I don't know if that's something that can be solved. I don't really think so, actually. It's just an issue with the space. And I think because it's so new, the whole industry, this is going to be an issue for a while. And maybe over time, it will level off in terms of this knowledge gap that exists.
Yeah, the thing is that this is not just a trend with crypto. This is the trend with the world. And this is the trend of how a lot of these weird dictators or like leaders come to power is through the power of misinformation, because most people can't think critically, and that's an issue. Like, take a look at like the misinformation, like for example with like Ukraine, there was that phone transcript with Trump and the Ukrainian president, the whole like quid pro quo. Are you following that? Like basically
not in detail, just a bit.
Yeah. And like the whole, you see like all these supporters, they're like, read the transcript, and there's nothing there. But the thing is that when you read the transcript, it's really, really clear that it's there. And they've interviewed these people. So, okay, you say, read the transcript. Have you read the transcript? What does it say? And they're like, I don't know. I trust Trump. It's the exact same thing. Or like climate change, denying climate change, or anti-vaccination people. It's all the same thing, because if you don't trust any source, like there's all this thing like, oh, everyone's like lying, then I just choose what I want to believe, right? And this is a very sad state, and this can only be solved through teaching people how to think critically. And that's why I think democracy is a horrible model for populations where people can't think critically, because it doesn't become the representation of the people. It's more of like, how can I manipulate the people to think like me?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get too political, but I also question whether or not democracy is like the right thing, because kind of what you're saying, if it's great if everyone's properly informed and capable of getting the right information that they need, but maybe not so great. But that's definitely getting super political, which I don't mind. I have a political channel, but it's like off topic. So kind of talking about the maximalism stuff. Well, not maximalism, but cults. How do you feel about Bitcoin maximalists? I like Bitcoin. I think that there is some development there, and I think it's okay that people disagree ideologically. I think that's to be expected, and that's okay. But I don't really like, and I don't know how to operate within the space where, because as we're saying, it's very hard to distinguish scams from not scams. Everything is sort of written off, and also that people don't like hearing criticisms of, like Bitcoin isn't really fast enough to be like internet money as it was initially idealized to be. That's not to say that things can't change, or that it's like useless or anything like that, or that it wasn't pioneering. But like, I personally just find it very, very difficult to operate in this space where it's like, I can't even say if I say the wrong thing, I'm just not a supporter of Bitcoin anymore, which is not true. Like it's very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, like everything but Bitcoin is a shit coin, and that whole drivel and that sort of narrative is horrible, right? And like, for example, I may not agree everything that what Ethereum does, but I do think they're trying really interesting things. Whether it works or not is a separate question, but if they are genuine attempts, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as people know that this is a great experiment. And that's the same thing with Bitcoin, right? And the thing is that a lot of like the stuff that Bitcoin maximalists have been like saying as scammy and stuff like that, like for example, they criticize Ethereum for like enabling all these ICOs and creating their own tokens, but now Blockstream's doing that with their liquid side chain, which allowing people to raise money from their assets and stuff like that. So I'm like, how's that different, right? You are enabling them, right? It's a neutral platform. People can use it for good or bad. And I mean, like for example, one of the like I mean, you would be familiar with this. Like for example, with Bitsy, right? Bitsy is an exchange that's supported by Blockstream. I believe like Samson and a couple of other people are also investors in Bitsy. And Samson has come up really against stuff like Ethereum, right? But at the same time, what is Bitsy actually doing, right? So Bitsy is creating its own token on the Liquid sidechain and trying to raise money for $50 million. And so how's that different, right? Just because it's on Bitcoin is legit? No, it isn't. And Liquid sidechain is basically controlled by Blockstream or federated or so. You complain about centralization, so their only defense against that is that, we never said that this was decentralized. So okay, fine. And then after that, like the whole misdirection about whether Bitsy has the requisite licenses to operate. I mean, I'm not going to go into that, but you can just look it up. So I'm just saying that many of the things that a lot of these Bitcoin maximalists are saying, they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So how is that different? And people say that Lightning will help us scale. We've been waiting for a really, really long time for Lightning to actually work very well. I mean, there are still issues.
Like 2 years. Like since
More
the whole
than
Bitcoin Cash thing, it was all about scaling. That was the whole
about
issue.
the SegWit, Lightning, and all of that stuff. And it's been a really long time, and they are still making developments in that regard. But hey, look, you criticize Ethereum for not delivering Ethereum 2 on time, and then what about Lightning? It's still a work in progress, and we shouldn't be crapping on people like that. There are many other projects that haven't delivered as well. Yeah. So I feel rather sad because people keep on saying that Bitcoin can do everything. It can't. It's just really, really clear that it can't do everything, and that's not a fault of Bitcoin, but as everything in the world, you can't have everything. Like if you want privacy, then you lose auditability, right? You're not gonna hide values. So what do? You do a federated sidechain, which is like semi-centralized. Yeah, that's the trade-off. That's not great. So if I can have another alternate currency that does privacy well, so what? That's good for the whole ecosystem. And I'm not against Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin can swap into the privacy coin, you do your transactions there, then you come up back into Bitcoin. What's wrong with that? Right. We should be thinking about how we can work together as an ecosystem, and as long as the project is delivering some value, as in this is something that they're good at, they're building it, and it ties into the ecosystem as a whole, so that I don't just have to use Bitcoin. I can use other coins, but it's part of a global ecosystem, a combination of technologies, rather than we should build everything on Bitcoin. People that say they want to build smart contracts on Bitcoin. You're never going to have that. And as a result, then there's stuff like RSK, like Rootstock, which then are trying to build smart contract capability on Bitcoin, but they then have this side chain thing as well. And I'm like, well, is that really that different from having a separate chain? It's like, ideologically, is it that different? It really isn't, So I just find the whole Bitcoin maximalism thing as the most hypocritical thing there is, and people have to take off their blinders, and people keep saying oh yeah, Bitcoin privacy is coming, we have Schnorr signatures and Taproot, and I'm like, Schnorr signatures, Taproot, and they're great, but they're very incremental improvements. The only thing Schnorr signatures does for privacy is to hide the fact that a transaction is a multi-signature transaction or not. Yeah, it's just it's kind of how to say, I'm totally naked, and then I'm just covering my private parts with a leaf, right? And yeah, it technically does improve privacy, but it doesn't solve the key issues. So I mean, I'm biased because, of course I run a different coin, but I'm not here to displace Bitcoin. I'm just here to offer alternatives to that stuff that Bitcoin can't do. And I think privacy is one of them.
Yeah, I think that it really highlights different mindsets when it comes to building something and putting it out into the world and wanting to create value so that people want to use it. Because if you have a more collaborative frame of mind, then you will see that other coins out there creating value are actually just increasing the pie. They're increasing the reasons why people might want to come into the crypto community versus being limited to one thing. And that's different than if you think, oh, this new project is just going to cannibalize my project. That's not always the case. And it's also very not likely to happen because you're already like a first mover in the space. Like you're not going to be displaced. Like it's not likely to happen. And so it's definitely, I think, a mindset thing. And I don't know how to change it, but I don't like it either. So.
The only thing that would change it is that if basically altcoin market caps really start challenging Bitcoin, and I think that would be a wake-up call. I think people have been too confident about like Bitcoin being the sole winner, and I've seen this narrative so many times, and people talk about the Lindy effect, which is powerful and stuff like that, but at the same time, if Bitcoin continues on its current trajectory, it is at risk of being displaced. And I'm not even talking about Bitcoin killers, but it's just like saying that it's going to lose its place as like 70% or 80% of the market cap. And if it goes down to, let's say, 40%, yeah, it's still the dominant player, but it means that now I have to survive in this group of other coins, and that may actually be a good thing for Bitcoin. I don't know. I mean, that would be a really interesting turn of events, because I do feel that everyone's like, I mean, this is something that I actually talked about. Like, everyone's too obsessed about Satoshi's vision, or like how we shouldn't be modifying things too much. And okay, maybe that's fine, but in a space that's so young, like 2008, 2009, and you're saying that you're going to kind of like, only do incremental improvements now, like when there's so many other cool technologies coming out. I think that's a real shame. And yeah,
I was gonna say, it sounds like a religion. Like you just have to adhere to the doctrine, the already established doctrine.
It is a religion. Exactly. And I mean, like, that's the same thing with martial arts as well. Like, I'm actually wearing an Aikido shirt, and one of the things
Reuben, sorry, I just want to tell people listening, Reuben is super cool, and is a dojo instructor, and what do you call it? You're something fighter. Very, very cool person. I say continue now.
But the idea was that, like, even though I run a dojo, I'm the dojo cho, the head of the school. If people tell me like, oh yeah, is traditional Aikido good to prevent for self-defense on the street? I'm like, no, it's horrible at that. It's like, because too many people have said like, okay, this is the way O Sensei did it, our founder did it, and therefore this is the only correct way. We cannot change it because it's perfect, without realizing that even our founder, his technique developed and changed during different periods of time. So why are you framing it? And as a result, like when there are new developments that come up, you're like, nah, O Sensei is right. And this is exactly what a religion is. And you take a look, like, I mean, there's this whole website called Bushido, which is quite funny. It's like, it's a play on and Bushido, which is like the warrior code, but now it's like Bushido. And you see all these guys, and I've seen it in my own dojo as well, where they have so much respect for me that even though my technique, I didn't do it right, they still fall down, and they believe that it's real. And I'm like, why are you falling down? I didn't even touch you. And this is the whole thing. It's like you accept without actually questioning, and that's why I feel that, that's why stuff like Muay Thai, stuff like that, because there's resistance, you're putting it under pressure, and that's why the technique develops and become effective. And that's the thing with what Bitcoin and all these other currencies should do, which is means there's conflict, but in the sense that we're not saying that we're not ever going to change, but we're going to better our ideas. You know, like all our privacy coins, like Zcash has an approach, Monero has an approach, Zcoin has an approach, Mimblewimble has an approach. Grin, let's like duke it out, put it under pressure, put it under scrutiny, and then what would come out of this is not necessarily a winner, but the whole technology just grows as an entire body rather than saying, okay, I'm going to stagnate and think this is the best. So I think that's like a very good analogy as to, you know, how the industry should develop. Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You're really great with the metaphors. So one more thing I want to ask you before we end things was what you thought about what happened with the US indicting the Ethereum dev that went to a conference in North Korea, who the US has sanctioned for obvious reasons. What do you think about that? I guess philosophically, because most people in the crypto space understand that the technology exists in order to bypass these kinds of sanctions.
Oh, well, I have to admit, I haven't looked in like absolute detail as to what exactly happened, but of course from what I was reading on the news, you know, Virgil was someone that was actually almost like semi-bragging that he was doing this, and like he's going to North Korea and stuff. Whether he actually taught them about money laundering, I don't know, but if he did that, then that's kind of silly, right? And I think the whole idea is that, I don't think it's wrong to educate people about cryptocurrencies and the possibilities of cryptocurrencies. And the thing is that, look, you know, you don't need someone to teach you how to do money laundering or to bypass sanctions using crypto. You can just kind of do it already, right? And I feel that what Virgil did was kind of silly, like if he kind of rubbed it in the face, you know. But if he was there just to like generally educate about the potentials of the technology and whatnot, sure. Of course, there's that whole like narrative, like should we be even engaging with these, like, you know, sort of like possibly rogue states, right? But I don't know. I would like to think that technology is neutral, but I'm also realistic that some technology isn't. Like if you have nuclear capability, like we should share that with everyone. But I think if you're just basically sharing, okay, this is blockchain technology, this is what Ethereum is doing, this all this DeFi stuff, I don't think there's anything wrong, and perhaps it might spark some sort of revolution or change because of these technologies. But I do think that we shouldn't be at the same time saying like, you know, I'm going to help a rogue state to bypass sanctions and stuff like that. But I mean, that's my point of view on that. It's not a very deep opinion, but I do feel that you shouldn't go out of your way to piss people off unless it's really worth it. Like, for example, like whether he went to North Korea or not, whether he did that, I mean, the impact is really, really low. Like, okay, maybe North Korea understands a little bit more. But if it's something like Snowden that, you know, shows the extent of government abuse and stuff like that and pisses off the government, I mean, then it might be worthwhile, like pissing off a government intentionally, or not intentionally, but because this is of such public importance that people need to know. And I guess that's the kind of line you have to draw. You have to balance, like, am I willing to sacrifice myself to let the truth go out? And very few people can say they can do that. And that's why I have immense respect for people like gave up everything to uncover these things. And if not for Snowden, I don't think we will be, you know, the whole privacy space will be a lot worse off, because then people are like, oh yeah, you're just imagining things. The government isn't really spying on us and stuff like that. They don't abuse it. They're only using it for law enforcement. But because of what Snowden did, we know that they are human. They are subject to power trips, or we realize the extent of the abuse, and therefore we should think about privacy a lot more. So yeah, that's kind of my view on that.
I thought that was a pretty nuanced view. I don't know. I probably don't know any more detail than you. I did read that he had been warned not to do it, and he decided to go ahead anyway. And for me, it's a question of, like you were saying, is the reward worth the risk? And also, was he helping the state, or was he trying to reach the people? I don't really think he could reach the people without going through the state. Like that wouldn't they wouldn't allow it. And I don't know what kind of access North Koreans have to the internet where they could possibly just go find this information. I don't think any. But I don't know the details.
It's the intranet, so they don't even have internet.
Yeah,
they only can access their own websites. Yeah,
but I think just from the fact that it's a dictatorship, I don't think that him going there would even get to the people if he was trying to do that in the first place.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it was the case. I think for that particular case, obviously the drawbacks outweigh the reward,
Yeah.
And I do think it's kind of silly to do that. But if it was like an open forum, I mean, it's really hard in North Korea. I don't pretend to be an expert in that, but if there was a chance that this technology could be reaching people, not just government officials and stuff like that, even if they are within the camp of, even if they're pro-government right now, I think there's some value to that, because it sparks, there's a spark that may start. I'm not saying that what he did was correct, but what I'm saying that if there was a way to say look, understand the importance of privacy, understand what it means that to have a dictatorship one, and these are the tools to kind of erode, to have more of a balance between power of the people and the government. And they may start out as government fanatics, but even if you convince maybe one or two people and these people start a spark, that may be worth it. But it's really hard to evaluate. But I really felt that maybe what Virgil did was less of let's change the world, but more of I think it's really cool to go to North Korea and talk about blockchain. I feel that was his main purpose, rather than trying to change stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions for you. This has definitely been interesting, and we talked about everything that's happening now, and kind of philosophical questions about technologies and where they can lead, and about our favorite, both of our favorite topics. I think the grammar there was wrong, but we talked about privacy. So thank you for coming on Crypto Ramble and sharing all this information. Just to remind you guys, listen, this is Reuben Yap, and he kind of works with / runs Zcoin, a privacy project, and he's an awesome person, and I'm glad to have him on.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Desiree.
All right, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
All right, bye.